James Whitmore, one of the most renowned billionaires in America, was known not just for his immense wealth, but also for his philanthropy and prestigious reputation in the business world. At 58 years old, he had built an empire that many envied. Luxurious mansions, a collection of high-end cars, and a prominent presence on the boards of the most influential corporations made him a symbol of success that countless people aspired to emulate. To outsiders, James's life seemed flawless, lacking nothing. But the reality was far from the glittering facade. Beneath the surface of his highly successful exterior, James was battling an ever-deepening loneliness. He had no family, had never been married, and his personal relationships were fleeting and shallow. A quiet sense of isolation steadily engulfed his mind, even as he tried to fill the void with work, grand projects, and endless meetings. No matter how many achievements he amassed, James could not escape the hollow feeling within his soul. One crisp autumn afternoon, as the chill breeze swept through the bustling streets of the city, James walked out of an important meeting at his corporate headquarters. His mind was clouded with tangled thoughts, questions without answers. On a whim, he decided to stroll down the crowded streets, an infrequent habit that gave him a rare sense of calm amidst the hustle and bustle. The city's noise, the hurried footsteps of strangers, offered James the only solace where he felt smaller than the world around him. But that day was different. As James approached a street corner, his eyes fell on a boy sitting on the sidewalk. Roughly 17 or 18 years old, the boy wore tattered, old clothes, his trembling hands clutching a cardboard sign that read, "Please help." His face bore the weary lines of a harsh life, yet his eyes shone brightly, filled with a peculiar determination that was hard to ignore. Something about the boy made it impossible for James to look away. They locked eyes, and in that fleeting moment, James felt an unsettling sense of recognition. The boy's sharp, piercing blue eyes, the chiseled features of his face, even the cleft in his chin. Everything was like a younger version of himself. James's heart pounded, and an uneasy sensation spread through his body. This couldn't just be a coincidence. Drawn to the boy by an inexplicable force, James knelt down to engage him in conversation. Through their brief exchange, James learned the boy's name, Christopher Johnson. His mother had passed away not long ago, leaving him to fend for himself on the streets. As James listened to Christopher's story, an indescribable feeling of responsibility began to stir within him, as though fate had deliberately placed the boy in his path. That sense of accountability only grew stronger as James realized that this encounter would profoundly change the course of his life. On that brisk autumn afternoon, James had no idea that this unexpected meeting would transform not just the boy's life, but his own forever. James invited Christopher to his home, despite the boy's wary glances and clear distrust. "Just a meal and a place to rest for the night," James reassured him. Christopher hesitantly agreed, following James into the luxurious car. His eyes darted around, constantly scanning his surroundings, as though trying to understand the true intentions of this stranger. When they arrived at the penthouse, Christopher couldn't hide his astonishment. The entire space was a masterpiece of opulence. Glass walls surrounded the living area, soft golden lights reflected off the marble floors, and an elegant leather sofa sat prominently in the expansive living room. Christopher hesitated to step inside, almost as if he feared he might stain the pristine space with his presence. "Make yourself at home," James said, placing a hand gently on Christopher's shoulder. "The bathroom is over there, and you'll find clean clothes in the wardrobe. Once you're ready, I'll prepare some dinner." Christopher nodded, walking toward the bathroom with cautious steps. As the door closed behind him, James sank into the plush sofa, his thoughts swirling. He couldn't shake the strange feeling that had taken hold of him since meeting Christopher. How could their lives intersect so unexpectedly? Was this merely a coincidence, or was it a sign of something far greater? Over the next few days, James made every effort to help Christopher in practical ways. He rented a modest hotel room for the boy, bought him a few sets of new clothes, and began calling his network to find suitable job opportunities. At first, Christopher remained guarded, but gradually he started to trust the older man. Yet no matter what James did, he couldn't dismiss the uncanny resemblance between them. It wasn't just the physical features. They shared a strikingly similar demeanor, a quiet strength in their gaze that James found unsettlingly familiar. One evening, as they dined at a small restaurant, James mustered the courage to voice the thought that had been haunting him for days. "Christopher," he began carefully, "I have a proposal. I'd like us to take a DNA test." Christopher paused mid-bite, his eyes narrowing as he looked up. "A DNA test? Why?" "I don't know how to explain it," James admitted with a deep breath, "but I have a feeling. I think we might be related." The boy hesitated, his suspicion evident, but after a moment he nodded. "All right," he said, though his tone was cautious. When the DNA test results arrived, James couldn't believe his eyes. The document in his hands seemed heavier than the wealth he had accumulated over decades. Christopher was his son. Images of a woman from James's past flooded his mind. It was a fleeting romance from years ago, one he had barely given a second thought. He had never known that she was pregnant, and now, staring at the undeniable proof, James felt the weight of his ignorance. Christopher, his son, had grown up in poverty while he had thrived in wealth. The guilt was overwhelming. James couldn't fathom the hardships Christopher had endured, losing his mother, living on the streets, and fighting for survival every single day. Determined to confront the truth, James invited Christopher back to his home. Sitting across from him, James took a deep breath and confessed. "Christopher," he began, his voice heavy with emotion, "the DNA test results are in. You are my son." Christopher froze, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice rising. James tried to remain calm. "I didn't know. If I had known, everything would have been different." "Different how?" Christopher interrupted, his tone laced with bitterness. "Where were you when I needed you most? When my mom worked herself to death just to keep us fed? When she was lying on her deathbed because we couldn't afford hospital bills?" Each word was like a dagger to James's heart. He had no defense, no excuses. All he could say was, "I'm sorry." The path to reconciliation was far from easy. Christopher refused to accept money or help just because James felt guilty. What he wanted instead was to build a genuine relationship. Through long conversations, James began to understand the harsh reality Christopher had faced, losing his mother, struggling to survive on the streets, and enduring countless challenges just to make it through each day. Meanwhile, Christopher slowly realized that James was not a perfect father, but he was making an effort to atone for his past mistakes. One day, as they sat together on a park bench, Christopher finally opened up. "I want to go to college," he said softly, his voice filled with quiet determination. "I want to do something meaningful, to help people like me." James felt a surge of pride. "I'll help you achieve that," he said firmly, his gaze unwavering. Gradually, the bond between them grew stronger. James didn't just offer financial support. He gave his time and attention, things he had never given to anyone before. In return, Christopher gave James a new perspective on life. Through his stories and experiences, James came to understand that true success wasn't measured by wealth or accolades, but by love and meaningful relationships. Their father-son relationship was far from perfect. There were still misunderstandings and moments of tension, but both were committed to building something real, one step at a time. In Christopher, James found a purpose he had long lost. And in James, Christopher discovered a father, someone he could finally trust and lean on. The journey to find each other had been long and unexpected, but now they had a fresh start, a family neither of them had ever imagined having. The story of James and Christopher stands as a powerful testament to the strength of change and the resilience of determination. For James, success had always been defined by wealth and status. Yet, his journey with Christopher taught him a life-altering truth. True success is not measured by material possessions or accolades, but by the meaningful relationships we nurture. On the other hand, Christopher, after enduring years of hardship and loss, learned that no matter how challenging life may be, there is always a chance to start anew if you are willing to accept help and open your heart. As father and son stood side by side, gazing out over the city's glimmering skyline, they came to a profound realization. The future is not determined by the mistakes of the past, but by the choices we make moving forward. Family, they discovered, is not solely defined by blood ties. It is built on effort, forgiveness, and the deliberate decisions to bridge gaps and create bonds. Their story reminds us all of the transformative power of compassion and second chances. It shows how even the most fractured relationships can be mended through honesty, perseverance, and the willingness to rebuild trust step by step. It is a reminder that redemption is possible, not only for individuals, but for the connections that define our humanity. If this story resonates with you, we encourage you to share it with those you hold dear. Together, let us spread messages of kindness, empathy, and hope. Don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories 365, where we share inspiring tales like this one, celebrating the beauty of resilience, love, and the human spirit. Each subscription is a small but vital step in helping us continue to tell stories that change lives and inspire new beginnings. Thank you for being a part of this journey with us. We look forward to sharing more heartfelt stories with you in the future. See you in the next chapter.